Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us at Family Connect. My name's Lauren and I lead on the National SDS project at Enable, and I run these sessions, so you've probably all seen me before. But tonight we are joined by Donna and Laura from Social Work Scotland, and we are here to talk about self-directed support. So this month, the month of May, our theme for Family Connect has been SDS. So the ladies are here tonight to tell us a wee bit about what they do, what they've been working on, you know, what that looks like. So I will hand over to you guys. I think Laura's got some slides to share. So I'll hand over to you guys. Off you go, Donna.
That's great, Lauren. Thank you very much, and lovely to be here. Lovely to meet you all, and thank you for giving up your very sunny evening to come and join us. I'm Donna Murray, and my colleague Laura, she'll introduce herself in a wee minute, but we're both from the Social Work Scotland self-directed support team. We've got a little presentation, there's about 10 slides, and we're really happy to send the slides to Lauren so you can have access to them. But we'll go through them. Please feel free to put anything in the chat just as it comes up, any comments or questions, and then hopefully at the end we can have a really good discussion. So thanks, Laura. Laura's just going to put up the first slide. Laura, I don't know if you can see that one, but we're just on slide, that's it, perfect, that's great. I hope everyone can see that. Lauren, can you see that okay?
Yep, perfect.
Fantastic, okay. So that's really who we are, and we're hopefully going to be talking today about the improving and the implementation of self-directed support. And I know there'll be lots of experts in the room, and I know that you've been learning a lot and know a lot about self-directed support, so hopefully we can learn from you too. But we're a team of 4. And we're headed up by Dr. Jane Kellock, and we're supported by Callum, who is our administrator, keeping us all right. Laura and I are the 2 self-directed support officers, and we're all funded by Scottish Government to help with the further implementation of self-directed support within local authorities. We're hosted in Social Work Scotland, which is the voice of social work leadership in Scotland, because we know that social workers hold that statutory duty for self-directed support. And we also know that social workers have a key role in that relationship between supported people, families and carers, and ensuring there's choice and control in your care and support. So we also know that from My Support, My Choice, which was the research done by supported people, that self-directed support works best when there's a good relationship between social worker and the family and carers and supported people. You might also know that in the independent review of adult social care, the Feely report, people said that Scotland was really, really good at strategies, but a bit poor on implementation. And that implementation gap is often referred to as the difference between what we set out in legislation and guidance and what actually happens on the ground. And Feely also said that we need to do a lot more about improvement in terms of bridging that implementation gap. And that's what our team has been working on for the last 3 years. We use a science-based approach called active implementation, and we take out evidence from supported people, families and carers about their experience of self-directed support and what social workers have told us, and we try and look across the whole system as to how we improve it. So our next slide, Laura, thank you. So what we thought we would do tonight is look at what frames our work, what affects our work, and this will all be information that you will know or maybe use or will be supporting people to use. But obviously we have our wonderful piece of human rights legislation, that's our self-directed support, well, our Social Care Scotland Act, and that's what tells local authorities what they have to do to give access to self-directed support in a way that supports people's rights to choice and to dignity and being able to take part in the life of their community. The law also tells authorities that they should treat supported people with dignity and respect, offer the 4 options, make sure that supported people have a say in planning and what that support looks like, make sure that supported people have enough information to understand what's available and to make choices which are right for them, and make sure that people have opportunities to challenge and ask questions about any aspect of their support, and they're given enough time to participate in decisions. The statutory guidance, and that's just been updated, is also issued to local authorities to ensure that that reflects the duties of the Act and the powers behind the Act. The guidance covers adults and children, young carers and adult carers, and it was developed by Scottish Government with contributions from ourselves and other key partners. And then finally, well, not finally, just before we get to the final bit, we have the standards. So, and Laura will tell you lots more about the standards, but those standards were co-produced with a whole range of stakeholders, taking a whole system approach, and describes what good self-directed support looks like. The standards are core to our work and guide our progress, as well as helping local authorities to describe how they're getting on with their implementation and improvement. The standards are currently being reviewed, and as I said, Laura will tell you a little bit more in the next few slides. But finally, for now, and I say for now because we've obviously got the National Care Service on the horizon, we have a self-directed support national improvement plan, and that was put together with Scottish Government and self-directed support national collaboration. And the overarching aim of this plan is aligned with the values that underpin the Act, and that's to support and enable people to achieve the outcomes that are important to them, to lead full and meaningful lives, and to participate and to contribute to the economy and society. And we'll talk about the 3 outcomes that are in that National Improvement Plan later on. So I'm going to apologise in advance for our next slide. We're just kind of testing out, and it's very, very busy, and the writing is very, very small. So it's a work in progress, but it's really just to show all the different spaces where self-directed support improvement is happening. And that's really just, I guess, to give us a sense of hope that there's lots going on, but also to show people where they might want to get involved. So all the cogs we see are kind of moving towards improving self-directed support for people, for carers and families who are at the centre, and also for workers who are responsible for implementation. They all have different functions, and they're all funded to help achieve the outcomes of that national plan. So we've got the national collaboration, and that's all our stakeholders, which I know includes Enable and their, COSLA and Scottish Government and advocacy bodies and rights bodies and disabled persons organisations. We've got Social Work Scotland, that's us, and we've got a community of practice, which, as I said, we'll explain a little bit more later, but that's for local authorities. We've got In Control Scotland. We've got a personal assistant programme board, so that's to look at support for PAs and that relationship with employers. We've got the Support in the Right Direction projects, which are providing independent support. And we've got a practice network, which is all the people involved in local authorities who are doing the administration around self-directed support. So that's all the spaces at the moment where there's funding to help national improvement. I'm sure there'll be more added, but we'll probably have a little cog in the corner for Scottish Government because they've got an improvement plan, and also for other people that might get funded for bits of work to help with that national improvement. So I'm going to hand over to Laura now, who's going to tell you a little bit about that National Improvement Plan and what's in it. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you, Donna. I hope folk can hear me okay. So yeah, so as Donna said, she gives a wee introduction there to the fact that there is a national improvement plan that was sort of co-produced between Scottish Government, COSLA and the national collaboration. So lots and lots of people who are involved in organisations who are interested and passionate about the future improvement of self-directed support. And there were 4 sort of overarching big outcomes of that plan, which we've got listed here. So the first one is about that experience of people and carers having choice and control over their support. So that was obviously one of the things that's really, really important and an area where lots of good work needs to happen. The second was about the workforce, so the people that do the jobs, so the social workers and the social work assistants and all the other social workers, bosses, managers, leaders that need to be involved in doing the job. And some of that was actually about staff that went beyond social work services as well. The third big area for improvement was better systems and better culture. We know that the social workers work in quite complicated systems, and sometimes when you're navigating that SDS process, the system and the culture in which some of the people work isn't always the easiest situation for them and doesn't help them deliver good SDS. And along a similar vein, that fourth theme is about the people that make the decisions, the leadership, the people that set the trend for how SDS is going to be delivered in a particular area. So these were the 4 areas that were identified as these are the sort of areas where we think really good improvement work needs to be completed. And that's helpful for us because these 4 link directly to how we think about our work and how we've been organising some of our work and the sort of active implementation science that Donna was talking about earlier. And I just want to show you just this next slide. I do apologise, it is a bit small, but I'll try and sort of talk through it all. This is a bit of an attempt to explain to you how we use our complicated active implementation science, which is about understanding that there is a big web of complexity out there and trying to use a science-based approach to understand it and to make things better in SDS. Because we know that the ways we were trying to do things and improve things beforehand weren't always effective. So this is a different attempt. And it's for us to work with that complexity and that difficulty. We're not asking anybody else, certainly not anybody on this call tonight, to know that, understand that, like that. It's our jobs to do the difficult thinking and to help all the other people that work in the system, all the leaders, all the social workers, all the supported people. It's our job to do that sort of thinking and placing things on their behalf. We just want to help. So active implementation does sit quite neatly with the National Improvement Plan, as I was saying, and that's because these bits of writing, which are in red, which I'll read out. So the first one up the top says supported person and carers choice over their support. And then down here on the left-hand side of the triangle, we've got that workforce, all the people that do the jobs, do the assessments, help with the planning. That's down the left-hand side of the triangle. Down the right-hand side of the triangle, we've got these systems and these cultures that exist around self-directed support and where all the staff and where all the people are. And then we've got the better leadership down the very bottom. So you can see that all echoes with the same languages we had in this slide here. It's all the same. So it just shows you how the National Improvement Plan fits with our work. And what we've got up the top here in terms of our active implementation is where we talk about where the magic happens in self-directed support. The magic happens between the relationship between the social worker and the person. And it can be the person and the network behind the person. So that could be their family, could be their carers, their parents, their friends, the people that are important in their life. And when they have really, really good conversations and start putting together what the person already has in terms of assets and strengths and real benefits in their life and the things that they want to achieve, which is their outcomes, and they start having a plan about how to put that together, that's where the real magic happens. That's where we start seeing really good relationship-based practice, so getting on really well with your social worker. And we also see really getting to the good stuff about how someone's going to have a good life. And when we move down a little bit, that good conversation and having that social worker in your life, starting to put some of the jigsaw pieces together, they're there because they can open this door. This is the door to services, this is the door to support, this is the door to having the life that you want to have the way you want to have it. But sometimes you don't have the ability to open that door. You might need someone from a service or a social worker to help open that door for you. And it's their job that's to navigate this triangle. It's their job to be the really good worker that's had the good training and got lots of permission from their bosses and their managers to be able to help you in the way that's to help support you and your family the way that you need it. So they need training and they need good supervision and they need good support. And they also open the door to the system. So things like how budgets get decided and offered out to people, how things get recorded by a social worker so that there's good information being recorded about what folk achieving and what folk are succeeding and meeting their outcomes. And then down the bottom we've got the leadership again, so it's about that organisation, that council, that local authority, that health and social care partnership, the people in there that want to see good SDS happening, helping to make change. So they're supporting their social workers and their other staff, and they're helping to make changes in the system which make things take too long. And then all of these three things driving together are the things that we believe, if they're all working together in the way that can be maximised and improved, then that's how we get good SDS for this person up the top having this conversation with their worker. So the other thing that's really important within this, you'll see in the middle, we've got people again in the middle. So that's the person and maybe the people around the supported person too, because that's another important part of thinking in this way. Supported people need to be considered as leaders as well. So people that get support, people who are carers, parents, families, they need to get the recognition of their expertise and how they know lots of things about how the process, the system, the workers' competencies, all these things can be improved. So they need to be considered that as experts and leaders as well. That's what's going to create the positive change. So the work of our project and the SDS, the Social Work Scotland SDS project, tends to be about in this system with the workers, with the leaders, but because that's where we hope positive change will happen. But we only ever do that. All the work, the reason that we do all the work is because we want this better, we want better SDS, and ultimately that means better life, better opportunities, more inclusion, more involvement in the community and things that you love, better lives and better experiences for people, for their families, for children, for carers. So although it looks like we spend lots of time in the system and with the workers, and we do because that's where we believe lots of the change needs to happen, it's still always for the benefit of supported people, families, carers and children. So I'll just move on to talk a little bit about some of the work that we're going to do. So we've shown you the kind of the ways that we think about it, the different elements of the areas of the drivers, as we call them, that need to be considered and thought about for this work. And we've used those, and we've used talking to lots and lots of people in lots of organisations and lots of social workers, lots of people with lived experience of SDS, and we've got a plan for the year of what we would like to work on and we would like to achieve. And down the bottom of this COGS picture here, you'll see we've got some of the other organisations that feed into our work, not all of them, but some of the other, because we don't just do this work on our own, we always collaborate with other organisations, and they help drive and inform our work too. And Donna is going to come back and say a little bit more about that soon. But just to give you an idea of the things that we are going to be working on this year, the coloured text that's inside the cog that we have here, these are our work streams, as we're calling them. So these are the areas of work that we're going to take on this year. So the first one is, as Dawn has mentioned already, is the review of the SDS standards. So we have SDS standards. You may or may not know about them. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that review later, but essentially the standards, what good SDS looks like, sits right in the middle, and we're going to, if it's at all possible, make those standards even better this year in partnership with lots of other people. The second element of our work is this SDS practice resources, and what that piece of work looks like at the moment is Donna and lots of other people have worked on a toolkit for social workers so that they've got access to information about SDS that's really good, because that's what we've heard both from people who've got SDS and from social workers trying to support people through SDS and help people get budgets or have more choice and control, that although they know there's really good stuff out there, there's really good practice resources, there's lots of good guidance out there, they can't they can't find it, they don't know how to find it, it's all over the place. So the toolkit brings it all together in the one place and hopefully will make it easier for them to find, and so therefore easier to use. So it's going to be, and because that toolkit has been tested out with lots of social workers already, we're learning lots of things about what we need to do to make it better. Let's make it even easier to find, let's make it even easier to use. And so what we will do, once we've reviewed the standards, we will connect that work up to the practice resources as well. Number 3, which is our third work stream, our self-evaluation and improvement work stream, that's really going to be about local authorities or health and social care partnerships, so the councils, using the SDS standards to measure and learn how well they're doing with SDS. So they want to know how it's going locally, they want to see how they're doing, and they're going to need to involve local people in that. They need to find out what the experience of local people is. And some independent support and advice organisations are going to try this out too. They're going to use those standards to check in and see how they're getting on with SDS implementation too. Number 4 is the direct payment agreement, the direct payment model agreement. And that's for when people get a direct payment to appoint a PA. And that's a big piece of work, which is about discovering all the essential elements that need to go in a direct payment to make sure that employers and PAs are able to have the best possible relationship. That's a big area of work that's already been going, actually. Quite a lot of work's already been done on that. So that's very much on the go at the moment. We have our relationship-based practice, number 5, that's the one that's in blue. And that's quite simply about the fact that we know SDS works best. Already talked about it in that triangle, above the triangle, with a really good relationship. The magic of SDS is when a social worker gets to know a person, a family, a child, a carer really well, and they have good communication, have a good relationship, and make things happen really well. We just want to learn more about that. We want to learn more about how we can have more of that in SDS in Scotland, and we want to be able to share that knowledge out when we get it. Budget approval process is our number 6 in the pink, and that's basically some work we're going to be doing with our partners who are called In Control. Folk might have heard about them already. They're working with councils who are looking at the process they use to identify what budget somebody's going to get. So our team are going to be working alongside them to think about some of that work too. And then finally, patience of a saint, there are people waiting through all of this. I do apologise, it's very long. Number 7, our 7th area of work, training and practice development. And this is just quite simply, we know social workers need good training in SDS. We know that there are good, although there is lots of really good training packages and resources out there, it's not always getting to social workers. So we need to learn lots about that and make social workers the best possible training sort of resources. So find out what the best training resources are and offer them to social workers, but offer them in a way where they're actually going to get to do the training. We need to discover why this isn't happening, why they're not getting to go through the training that they need, and we need to try and overcome those barriers to that learning. So there we go, that's our cog, that's our work streams, and we're very happy to have either questions about those or folk involved in any of those work streams. I will say more about the review of standards before we finish up, but that's essentially what we're going to be working on for this year, but it'll also take a bit more than a year, so probably into the next year as well, because that's the thing about improvement work. It takes time. It takes time to embed these things because we're asking for change to happen. So I'll move the slide on and pass it on to Donna now. She's going to talk about some of the cogs at the bottom here and explain that a bit more to you.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Laura. And these will be brief, but basically all our work, as Laura said, is informed by lots and lots of people. And the National Collaboration are one of the key organisations where that happens and who have been really key in developing both the update of the guidance and also the National Improvement Plan. So you'll see some of the members on the screen there, and that includes advocacy bodies, carers, Scottish Government and COSLA are there. There is a page on the Self-Directed Support Scotland website where you can see all the minutes and the notes of the meeting and basically what they've been doing, so please feel free to visit that. And over the last 3 months, they've been working really hard to try and make sure that that national collaboration plan, that national improvement plan, sorry, is really what people want and what is required right now. And also that group will have a chance to monitor the plan. It's okay having a plan, but we've got to make sure that actually things are being implemented. So the SDS collaboration will be involved in that kind of evaluation of the work. So that's one space that informs all our work, and it's a very exciting space. The other space that we have is a community of practice, and that is really for all the local authorities and partnerships in Scotland who are involved in the implementation of self-directed support. And it brings lots of people together from those local authorities. So it could be social workers, it could be the Chief Social Work Officer, it could be finance colleagues or commissioning. It could be social work assistants. So it's just anyone in that local authority who's responsible for SDS. So through that community of practice, they talk about hot topics, difficult issues, talk about what's working well. It's a safe space for them, but it's very much about solutions. It's not about moaning about how things are not working. It is really about what solutions can we come up with. For us, the community of practice is really good because it teaches us about the challenges faced by social workers and other professionals. We learn how the system is or isn't working in local authorities. We learn about practice issues and that bit about that Laura was talking about, the training or the training not really allowing them to practice well, or the system. And also we find out about the role of leadership, and how if you don't have a good leader, it's not going to be, self-directed support is going to be difficult to implement. It's really key to have that leadership. You'll remember the wee diagram with leadership at the bottom there. And I guess it gets us to understand that there's local variation, and local variation is okay. You know, things will look different in Shetland than in Edinburgh. But we get to see that the different systems look like and their different approaches to self-directed support, and how how local authorities evaluate how far they've got. And we are able to share that learning with leaders, with Scottish Government and with COSLA. The team in return are able to share with the community of practice our active implementation learning. We test practice and we really look at methods for breaking down those big issues into manageable chunks for solutions and focused action. So together, the community of practice and the national collaboration influence all our work, and the improvements identified by both the community of practice and the collaboration are in that national plan. So hopefully we have all the voices and players represented in that plan. So just to finish off, we've just got the 2 more slides, and Laura's just going to briefly talk about that review of standards, and then we can open up for questions and comments and anything that you'd like to talk about. So Laura, over to you for that review of standards. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So yeah, we talked in our COGS picture about this big piece of work that's central to all our other bits of work, and that's the review of the standards. Sorry, I thought I had put a link to the standards on here and I haven't, so I'll make sure that I send that when we send that over to Lauren. Apologies if folk don't know about the SDS standards. There's a wee picture of the front cover just here, and we can make sure we send a link. And the standards were written a couple of years ago by the team and by lots of other people. It was a big piece of work that included lots of people, so many people got the chance to say, for the first time in Scotland, this is what good SDS looks like, and there's 12 standards. So that was really exciting because we'd never had anything to measure SDS against before. So Donna's just put the link in the chat. Thank you, Donna. That's great. Apologies, I've just managed to move the slide along as well. That was not very clever of me. Apologies. So yeah, so we developed the standards, the Royal We, because I wasn't in the team at the time, but my team just, worked on the standards with lots of other people. But we made that commitment at the time. They said, we'll put the standards out for a few years, but after a few years, we'll check back in on them, see what folk are saying about them, check if they speak for everybody. It was absolutely the goal that they would speak for everyone. But we know for some groups of people, it's harder to get SDS than it is for others. So we just want to make sure that there's nothing that's accidentally in the standards that are reinforcing that and not helping that situation. And the other thing that we want to do when we check through all these standards, when we review them, is just trying to make sure that we learn from how the standards have been used so far. So we know that there's social workers and there's social work leaders and managers that are using the standards to check how things are going. We know that independent support organisations, so the people that help people access SDS, they sometimes use the standards too when they're helping people understand what they should expect, or if they're trying to challenge a decision about somebody's support. And we know that people themselves and their families are sometimes using them. So we want to understand how they're being used, and then we want to make little tweaks and changes and think about how we can maximise the use, because there's no point in having these 12 standards that talk about everything that's good about SDS and how good it can be if we can't actually ever make that real and put that into practice. So that's a piece of work that's going to be happening. We are inviting people to get involved in that. There's a couple of ways that people can be involved in our review of SDS standards, and this invitation would be open to yourselves as well. We're going to have an editorial group who are going to help us make lots of decisions about the standards and help us understand where we might have gaps. But we're going to have small expert groups as well, who will look through the 12 standards in quite a bit of depth, but probably thinking about one particular group of people at a time. So say, for example, if when we do the initial screening of the standards, if we go, do you know what, I just don't think we've got enough in here about children and families in SDS, then we might bring together an expert group around children and families so that we can do a deeper dive. So there's those two sort of elements. There's the big group and then there's the smaller expert group. But there's also, for people who are interested in the standards, but who don't have the time or the opportunity or the inclination to join a big group, that's absolutely fine too. But you can stay involved in the work and find out how things are going if you sign up for our little newsletter. So if you wanted to sign up for that newsletter, our email address is there, but I'm sure also Lauren, if could point you in the right direction or let us know someone's details if that was okay. If you wanted to sign up, we'll try and make that as easy for you as possible, because anyone that would like our newsletter, we would be very happy to get that to them and make that as easy as possible. And yeah, the other thing is you would get to find out about all the other work that we're doing. That would basically just keep you up to date with everything that we're doing. So that's a little bit of information about the review of standards. Please have a think about if there's a role you would like to take or to be involved. We'd be very happy to have your voice in there. We're very keen to hear from people that we've not heard from before, because we know that some people are a wee bit more marginalised from self-directed support than they should be. So keen to explore that with new people. And then because we've had so many slides, you'll be pleased to hear we're at the last one. So we just wanted to give some slides. This probably isn't very useful for right now, but we just thought we would add them in at the end of the slide so that you would have these details. But we talked about the national collaboration. So we've included the link to the national collaboration because, as Donna said, you can see the notes and things and enable a partner on that. The framework of standards. Oh, we do have the link to the framework of standards. That's excellent. At least it's in there somewhere. So yeah, if you wanted to go in and have a look at what the 12 standards look like at the moment, that might motivate you to say, oh, we've got to change those a bit to make them more accessible and make them fit for more people. We also have an SDS library, and the project in previous years has done lots of work to tidy that library up. One of the things that gets commonly said about SDS is, oh, there's no information about SDS. I didn't get any information. And I can understand why people feel that way. But it's fair to say that there is lots of information, it's just not shared very well, unfortunately. And this SDS library contains lots and lots of resources that people might be interested in. SDS, that should have a D, SDSS should be at the end there. The SDS Scotland has an online forum. That's a good place if you ever have any questions about self-directed support and you'd like to speak to other people online who are passionate and knowledgeable about SDS. That's something that if you click on this link, or if you were to Google the SDSS forum, you would be able to sign up to online. And then finally, we have some more information about In Control Scotland. There's a wee link there to their website, but what I do know is that they've quite recently changed they used to do activities sort of online, but I think what they've done is they're moving that to be quarterly, so I don't think it's quite as regular as it was. So what they've really said is, if you're interested in any of their online groups, then email them, and this is the email address that you would email just to sign up. What I can tell you is they've got a children and families network specifically about SDS, and that's going to be on Thursday the 8th of June from 10 till 12, so 10 AM till 12 lunchtime. So that's one of the next activities that's coming up for them. So we've just gave you lots and lots of information about other things that you might want to look at, but we'll draw that to an end there because you've sat patiently listening to lots and lots of stuff. And as Donna said, we just want to talk to you now, hear the things you're interested in, hear what you've got to say about the work that we've been doing, give us your ideas, give us your questions. Let's have a chat.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That was brilliant, ladies, and thank you for giving up your time to come and talk to us. Does anyone have any questions for Donna or Laura? Don't know if you just want to pop a hand up, and I'll ask you to unmute yourselves. As usual, no pressure. If you know, or if you'd rather pop something in the chat, then please do. But please feel free. Oh, I can see Heather. I just got a wee thing to say that you've raised your hand, but I can't actually see you on my screen. So if you've got your hand up, please please go ahead. And
I've just got a couple of things. I'm going to go back to the club thing. And I was really pleased to hear that number 3 was the improvement for social work within each of the authorities. Because obviously, even though I'm a staff member, I've tried to get SDS before, and I've been told by social work that I wasn't eligible for SDS. And I'm, well, was under Eastern Berkshire Council, and they told me, oh, you're not eligible for SDS. Or so I didn't know there was no budget for me or something like that. So I'm really happy to hear that there'll be improvements within each local authority. And there was something else, but I think I've kind of forgotten it now. I forgot the other thing. I'll come back to me.
That's it. And I was just going. Oh, sorry, Lauren.
No, you're fine.
I was just going to come back to what you said. So see if it pops back into your head, just interrupt me.
Yeah.
The eligibility criteria is a difficult area for self-directed, so it doesn't really fit very well with the approach of self-directed support that we hoped we would be able to take when all the work was being done to plan what self-directed support was. And it's one of these systems, one of the things in the system that makes it difficult, because it's partly a way of protecting and making sure that there's enough resources to go around. And unfortunately, what that means is that you weren't able to get a budget at that time. I think it's important to bear in mind, and we have this in our SDS standards, there's a standard in there that's about early help and support. and early help and support is still a bit of SCS. It's still an important part of self-directed support, but it's not one that involves a budget. It's about people getting support that's personalised to them, because maybe they don't necessarily need a budget. They just need a little bit of support to connect to other things in their life that could be supportive. And there's
I've just remembered the other thing, because obviously at the time when I was looking at for a budget, it was before I started dating and before I got a partner, so I was kind of looking at starting the process of getting my own place. But now that I've got a partner and I'm moving into a flat next week.
That's really exciting, Heather.
Yeah, I kind of feel that I don't need SCS anymore, but still, I feel, still, even though, you know what I mean, Lauren.
Yeah, and I know you won't mind me saying, so Heather was living at home, but was desperate for her own place, and she contacted social work because you felt that you probably wouldn't have been able to manage totally on your own.
Yeah.
And they sort of said basically until she got into her own place, there was nothing that they could do. So there wasn't any of that sort of early help or early intervention or anything like that. It was just, well, get yourself a flat and then we might help. And it just was that, you know, that was really daunting, I think, Heather, wasn't it? That was worrying for you, because then what if you didn't get the help? But everything happens for a reason, I suppose, because as Heather said, she's moving into a lovely flat with her lovely partner. Next week, did you say, Heather?
Yeah, next week,
But again, it's something that maybe you'll come back to, Heather. You know, things change throughout your life all the time, so it's maybe something that you will come back to. So it's great for you to have the knowledge about all of this.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll let Cheryl talk now.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you, Heather. Cheryl, take yourself off mute.
Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, Heather. I've just started the SDS process. Till I understand, I live in South Lanarkshire, and I haven't had really any information about the process. I requested support last September. I only got a social worker come out of the house about 4 weeks ago. I've had one pamphlet of information about 4 options. So I'm really, and Lauren knows me because I wear a national parent hat. So I sit, to let you understand, I sit at the highest level of Scottish Government as a parent volunteer. I'm the chair of the National Parent Forum of Scotland. I shape policy and legislation across education and advocate for parents. So to my really disappointment actually is there's not been much awareness of SDS. And even through the process I've had with my son who has autism, who's got sensory processing disorder, who is effectively a school refuser. I really struggle. He's only in school about an hour and 40 minutes to maybe maximum 2 hours, a Tuesday, a Wednesday and a Thursday at the moment with support. He's got an AS5, and I started this, I was diagnosed with cancer during COVID. I'm a full-time carer. I can look after my mum and my husband. I was asking for help and support because at that point I don't know if cancer will come back. Luckily at the moment I'm clear, the chemo done its job. And I was really asking for support. My son's 15, going to be 16 in August, and I haven't been given really any information about what I can ask for, what the limits are. I understand the options because I can read the booklet that tells me option 1 to 4, but you talk about that early support, I get none. I mean, if you hadn't put this up tonight about the library resources and actually signposting me to information, and I'll be all honest, I will take this back right up the food chain because it's part of that journey. So the reason I've also applied for support is my son's going into S5. He can't sit any exams. So all of his stuff is about building his support for transition from school to wherever it is he's going to be going. The school have suggested that he goes for, say, a transition course to college. But under the law, the school is supposed to provide the support that would go with my son to college. The reality is, because he's in mainstream and he's not on an ASM base, he will not get support. So I'm advocating for support that he'll be able to go into college and do whatever he needs to do for transition. But But again, I have not been given any information about, they said, you just need to work out what you're asking for. And I'm like, but I don't know what I'm allowed to ask for. And Lauren, I know you're there. Don't get me wrong, I know you're there. But the reality is, for people who are in my position, who know absolutely nothing about social work intervention, know absolutely nothing about what support is available out there, this is absolutely like radio silence. And I'm a very big advocate about comms. I said, because one of the biggest things I do is try and translate government jargon into parent-friendly and transparent language, so people can understand what the ask is and understand what the policies are and how it impacts them. And at no point through my journey with my son did anybody point me, apart from Lauren, because I do, as I said, Lauren has, but point me in the direction personally of what SDS is, how I can apply for it. I mean, the social worker came out, and I swear to God, I sat there, the guy was like Columbo. It's the only way I can describe him. He had on his Mac jacket, and he kept telling me, we'll park that later. We'll just put it in the car park for now. We'll put it in the car park for now. And I'm like, I have no idea what you've car parked. I don't know what you mean by a car park. And even the social worker who's working with me, it's been kind of radio silent. I've had to make a phone call to her to say, have you spoken to the school yet? No, not yet. We're now like 4 or 5 weeks into this 12-week legal journey, and I still have no clue what I'm supposed to, what I'm supposed to do, what I'm responsible for. So seeing those standards, and I've read them, and the early support wasn't there, but actually those standards don't actually help me. I know that sounds terrible, but as a parent, they are irrelevant to me, if that makes sense. And I feel terrible saying that, because they should empower me. But it kind of empowers the role that you do, but not the support that I would get as the individual who's applying for, say, the budget, if that makes sense.
Please
Sorry,
don't.
ranting.
No, please don't. Firstly, I'm sorry to hear that that's been such a difficult situation, and it doesn't help me to hear that that's something that we've heard before. You know, we hear that from other people, so you're not alone, but that's not particularly helpful for you. And please don't apologise for saying that about the standards, because yes, we have absolutely written the standards as aspirations for local authorities to be, to be able to sort of hold themselves and measure and see where they're at. And it must be quite frustrating to be, having been through that personal situation and see, not be able to see your experience in the standards and feeling that your experience is still quite far away from what the standards are. And we take that, I absolutely take that on board, because one of the things that we hope to do when we change them and we slightly alter them is we want it to be easier for children, adults, parents, carers, families to be able to see what their rights are and see that much more clearly embedded, and so that it's easier to look at those standards and understand what your right is. That's something we'll try to achieve in these standards. And we know for workers who aren't necessarily that close to achieving the standards as well, it might be quite disheartening to read them and go, we're not there yet. That's why we want to make changes to provide practice guidance that will sit alongside them, that will help them, that will provide them with the information that they needed. So for example, if there's a place that your social worker could have gone, like the toolkit that's in development for the moment, and went to the section that's about how do I explain the 4 options really well, and if they'd gone into that big list of resources, maybe printed off a few for you, maybe looked at it alongside you on a tablet or a laptop, these kinds of things, because that would have all been saved in the one place. Now it's probably frustrating to hear that these are the bits of work that are going on and that they haven't happened yet, and I'm sorry that is the case. I think there are probably some local organisations that we could signpost you to as well, in terms of being able to, so I don't know whether you want to maybe sort of through Lauren, we could get your details and send that on, because sometimes the independent support organisations can be good in terms of helping people with the planning and the thinking before the assessment.
Sorry to interrupt you. What I should also say to make it clear, so I applied in September, I got a letter 4 weeks ago, and it was a Wednesday afternoon. The social worker was coming out and phoned me about that Thursday morning, the following day. When I said to him that was really far too much short notice, I've not got time to process this information, the social worker went, well, you'll get no choice, we'll have to be out tomorrow morning. So literally, I didn't have enough time to speak to an organisation to start this process. Yeah. I was basically told, you need to start it now. or it's really not going to be started effectively. So as I said, I have come into this under a 12-week thing. I've had radio silence from the minute after they left, the two left. I've had one, the social worker come out and was really lovely. I'm not going to fault her. She's absolutely fantastic, because it's not her. I don't blame her.
No.
I blame the process. I don't blame the social worker. I want to make that clear. She was absolutely lovely, and she's very supportive. She's at the end of the phone. But the reality is, I'm no clearer now as I was then. And as I say, policy and legislation that's what gives me my sanity. That's my voluntary role. That's my mental sanity. It's what keeps me my head fresh. So when I've just read your entire standard, so I absorb it like a sponge, and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, oh my God, I just wish the journey was more simplistic and it was more transparent, because I know there's organisations there, but you don't know when you're supposed to contact them. Like for me, I got no time to contact them, so I felt blindsided. I felt really off kilter, because I'm thinking, right, okay, I don't even know what stage the process is at just now. I don't know what I should be. Should I be contacting the social worker? Again, I've had no information sent to me to say, like, apart from what you and Lauren will send out to me, right? But that aside, but as a person in the very start of this journey, it's like radio silence, and it's just been back on what Heather said. You don't know what you have to ask. You don't know what to support. You think you're doing the right thing at the right time. And then you're saying, but actually, if you go for this option, you get that, you can get it yourself. If you don't, that makes you legally responsible. But that's one conversation that I've had without actually any directionality of what does this actually mean? So as I say, I know my son's not going to be able to be completely independent. He'll always require support. But the limitations in my knowledge of what to ask for, not being in that situation before, is quite hard. Yeah. And I worry for other people who are like me, who maybe are not like me, who don't have that other knowledge.
Well, I was just going to say that, Cheryl, actually, I think you are a brilliant example here of, you really know your stuff. You're really knowledgeable. You're involved in everything. You know, we've worked together before, and yeah. So you are a really knowledgeable parent who this maybe should be slightly easier for, but it's not. And I think that's the issue. And I think it's about, like, I know Laura, Donna, us. I know that we all want better SDS and all of these standards and the implementation stuff and the improvement plan and all of that is all geared to get there. But I think it's about how does that translate through to it actually happening is the issue. Because, you know, unfortunately that's what we hear all the time, Cheryl, is exactly what you've just said. And as I said, you're an expert as far as I'm concerned. So, but I will share around the presentation, and there is some brilliant information out there, Cheryl. It's just nobody kind of hands it to you, which is really difficult. But I'll share around all that information, and you know where I am, and you know that you can get in touch with us if you need anything going forward.
Can I thank you very much for that, Lauren? I will be in contact, but for you, Laura, and your team, if there is something that with my national organisation we can help you with parental representation to feedback, I'm more than happy. To let you understand, we have a local authority, we've got a parent rep in every local authority. So we cut across the whole of Scotland, hence why we cover education. But I do think this is a big gap missing. When I talk about additional support needs across Scotland, none of this is ever filtered back down to what we're doing. And for me, that's a huge gap. And I totally appreciate, and I'm thankful for the standards and information you've posted from Lauren and of yourself. It's really helpful, but it really worries me that this is so hugely important. The amount of people who start this process might not want to continue it because it is quite fearful, because you're kind of put the fear of God into you about, well, if you take this responsibility, do you realise you're going to be responsible for PAYE? If you can't find an organisation, there's no national organisations really left to actually help you that can facilitate that support. You're sitting thinking, right, on one hand it sounds fantastic, the other hand you're sitting thinking, holy moly, when am I going to have time to do that? I'm a full-time carer. I'm responsible for looking after 3 of my family members. You're asking me to oversee a budget. I can barely breathe as it is. and you're putting as additional pressure. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm happy to help in whatever format. As I say, tonight I was hearing Ben's mum thinking I've started this journey and I am quite honestly petrified, if I'm being brutally honest.
Cheryl, would it be helpful to talk to a couple of other parents who are using self-directed support to support their children and themselves as carers and have had to navigate the system? I'm just know instantly of a couple of parents who have done that. I'm wondering if it's worth talking to them parent to parent, but also because of your role on that national parent stage. And I'm also thinking about principal. I'm talking about ARC's work around transitions and how they've done lots of lovely work on transitions, but really helping young people and their families to prepare for that transition. You are the experts. Social workers have a job to do, but you are the experts. So have confidence in what works for you and take the time. You don't need to be jumping around to a very short time scale, you know, just take the time and speak to people about what would work for you, what would make a difference to you. It doesn't need to be called options. It doesn't need to even be called SDS. It just needs to be support that works for you and your family, both as a carer and as, you know, for your young one going through, you're being at school and doing that a different way. So I can certainly, through Lauren, I can give you some contacts. I'll check out with the parents that I support that are in similar situation. They've very similar situations. It'd be good to talk to them and how they navigated the system, and it's working well. So I can do that, Cheryl, and I'll send you some stuff through Lauren on the transitions, principles into practice. It's lovely work. And it really helps to, you know, it just kind of gives you things to think about what would work for you right now. And that'll change, because I don't know about you, but you need to change on a daily basis, never mind 6 weeks or 6 months. So I think that might be helpful too. And we'll take those examples back to that community of practice. It's really important for social workers and others to hear how difficult it is, that silence, you know, that not keeping people up to date. That's just good practice, you know, there's things that we can do. And I think Gail had said in the chat about the fact that you know, you are experts, and often independent support organisations or advocacy bodies or families are in the best position to say what might work for them. They don't need to know whether it's an option 1, 2, 3 or 4 or how it's going to be funded. They might be able to tell their story about what good support looks like, and a good social worker will be able to put that together with you or help with your independent support organisation. So I'm not in any way saying we'll solve your problems, Cheryl, but we can certainly connect you and certainly for other parents that might be useful.
Donna, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate that. As I say, I wear 2 hats here tonight. One is my parent of going through that process, but also, as Lauren said, I have an opportunity to try and bring things together with the work that I do through National Parent Forum, to give you a bit of understanding, which is why I'm a wee bit frustrated with the standards up there. National Parent Forum are part of the group that developed the health and social care standards, so to be part of that and everything else, there's no transition, there's no continuity, and I think this is about supporting young people to adults and adults onwards and there, because it's about empowering people. And I think that this tonight's been extremely helpful, so thank you so much.
Sorry, I put myself on mute for the dogs were playing around in the background. But no, thank you, Cheryl, and I'll connect everybody up. Nigel, I can see you've got your hand up. I noticed Gail had popped a question in the chat about social work students completing assessments, and that making families feel as if they're sort of not worthy or not, I suppose, not worthy of being allocated a social worker. Is that something that you've heard from other, you know, is that an issue that you've heard from other? I know actually I did a wee interview with a young girl who you know, Gail, last week or so, and she said exactly that. She's a young girl in her 20s going through the SDS process, and she said she's got a really, really complex health needs, care needs, really, really complex situation. And it was a social work assistant that was allocated to her case, and she felt a wee bit like that wasn't what she needed. You know, it was somebody that really understood the complexities and things.
Yeah, to come in there and pick up on that story. The family self-referred to me because she had a social work assessment completed and she felt it did not reflect who she was. It just focused
heavily on her complex needs around her health. It did not focus anything on who she was or anything, and her mum passed it over to me before I actually met her daughter, and she said, "What did you think?" And I says, "Well, I'd like to come out and meet your daughter, you know, and get to know her." But she says, "What did you pick up from the assessment?" And I had to be honest and say, I didn't know anything about your daughter from that assessment. There was nothing about who she was, what her skills were, what our dreams were for the future, you know, her family. There was absolutely nothing in it, and around the barriers that she has, nothing. So she has asked me to go out on a regular basis at the moment, you know, when her health's in a good place, and help her contribute to her own assessment, and then she'll contact social work and hand it over to social work. So that's just picking up on the story that Lauren was trying to tell.
Yeah, and she felt exactly that she wasn't sort of worthy.
And this is a young girl who has studied at university, you know, and has a degree, and she was going on to do, you know, a higher degree and everything, and it was in some sort of mediation. So she absolutely, you know, is totally switched on, has no, you know, complex needs around, you know, a learning disability, nothing like that. She is well switched on, she knows her mind and all this sort of thing, but there was nothing of that in her assessment at all.
Yeah, we did a session with her. So for those of you that are on our Facebook page, there's a wee interview with that young girl, just talking with some social workers, just talking about her experience and how that could have been made better and how that could have been different, how it could have been improved for her, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's tricky. It's really tricky. But Nigel, did you want to say something? I know you had your hand up. Take yourself off mute if you're there.
Yeah, I'll come in on the first bit, and the social work students. I think they are a valuable resource, but the situation really does need to be explained to families as to where their role is and how all of the information is reviewed and referred on, and that there is that secondary follow-up for clarifications and commentary, and it's got to be a two-way process.
Yeah,
I certainly have involved lots of students, lots of volunteers in helping our Smith-Magenis syndrome families in getting the support that they need. And in some respects, actually the students tend to have fewer families to deal with.
Yeah,
they're much better listeners. They're asking the right questions to get the information from families, because they're not making any presumptions on this one. They're still in their learning, and you can get a really good support plan produced from them. And quite often, if you're engaging and prompted, you can actually ask more stuff to go into it, and an experienced social worker might actually willingly volunteer. Now, this is somebody who's went through the process. My son Matthew is now 25. We were looking at transition from 14. We had self-directed support through direct payments in from when he was 7. Our assessments were initially done by Bernardo's family support workers. But when it became a little bit more complex, then social worker would get involved and put it in place. Now he's in a different situation, and all services are funded by the local authority. I did ask about taking on a blended model over COVID, because he wasn't accessing day services, and felt a direct payment route would give him more flexibility, particularly coming out of it as well, because he's rather constrained as to where he is at the moment. But no, I hear what Gail's saying about social work students. For me, it's if it's explained well, then there's a lot of mileage in this one. And anyway, we want these social work students to be the good social workers of the future. So they've got to cut the teeth somewhere.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I know that actually I've probably had families tell me that a social work student or a social work assistant can sometimes give a better assessment than maybe a fully qualified social worker. I think it is just that sort of thing of, well, why haven't I got a proper social worker? And you can understand why families would feel that. As you said, Nigel, if it's communicated to them and the communication is there, Gail said the same thing, it's a lack of communication with families. If that's explained and you know, people understand that, then I think everyone would totally get it. But you can understand why people sort of feel, oh, you know, why haven't I got a social worker to come and do this? Donna, I saw you take yourself off mute there, so I didn't know if you had something you wanted to.
I was just going to say thank you to Nigel for saying that. You know, we're working with some social work students at the moment who are not back in the office where there's a leader saying we've got no resources, this is how we do the system. And our learning is that social workers don't have a long lifespan because generally they've gone into the profession to do good, to make a difference, to be that good listener. And then they end up battering up against a system that doesn't help them practice as they've been trained, and then they're not supported by a boss who's saying be a little bit more creative, have a good conversation, take your time, build up trust, build up a relationship. So I think you've got a really good point there, Nigel. I certainly with the assessments that I've been involved in, the social work students have certainly had the most time to spend with family, definitely. So I think that, yeah, use that to your advantage. And I think, yes, you're right, it is about the communication. You know, that's not any less of a service, but it's how you can, you know, get that information back. And also what you want, as Laura says, it's not always about a budget. It might be about support that's community, that's digital, that's using different, you know, community resources and stuff. So it's not always about a budget. But I think that, and I think, Nigel, you had a really interesting comment about all that information, all those key assessments, you know, and how, you know, there's lots of them, isn't there? You could be sitting with a lot at any time, and how do they join together? How do you share information? The National Care Service was really to try and address some of that, you know, that kind of bringing stuff together. And we do have talk about the digital front door and what that would look like in terms of technology. And I see that you had things in there about, you know, the digital passport, which is a lovely way of capturing that information that can be shared with others. So I think that there's a lot of work that needs doing about coordinating and sitting all that information, obviously, with the family and the supported person, so they have ownership of it. But you don't need to repeat your story 10 million times, or you're not in 10 million different systems in order to get support services or a budget. So I think we've got a lot of work to do. If you've got any ideas how that should happen, please let us know, because I think for me it's a whinge all the time about how are we connecting? How are we connecting across the landscape to make it easy for people? Are we really connecting? Are we really trying? Or can we do more? So yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, I'd say you can do more. And what I found is, because I tend to come from a rare disease perspective these days rather than the learning disabled.
Yeah.
There is a whole lot of disjointment. A prime example was looking at coordination of care, and we had the learning disability, autism and neurodiversity team sitting in an office at one end of the corridor, and the team working on the rare disease implementation action plan sitting in an office at the other end of the corridor. Both teams have only got a few people in them, but they didn't know of each other's existence until we managed to put them in the same room together. What I found when I was looking at safe sleeping and leading the research project, that did have the representatives from Mental Welfare Commission, Education, Care Inspectorate, Social Work Scotland, a whole group of, I would say the bosses because that's pretty much who were in there. And what I was looking for was to try and get a consensus document as to how to approach safe sleeping. But it was clear that the different frameworks and the different processes and practices that exist within each agency often conflict with each other. And trying to get that sorted is there. And what was coming out, I'll just tell a little bit of the story on that meeting. We were talking about locked bedroom doors for children and adults who are awake overnight and need to be restricted in their movement around the house for their own safety and the safety of others. And the social work representation was that, oh, if we see a bolt on a bedroom's door, it's got to be viewed as deprivation of liberty or abuse or a real safeguarding issue. At which time the representatives from the care inspector came in and said, we don't have a problem with this one, would you like our generic risk assessment? And we had Colin there from Mental Welfare Commission and said there's nothing in legally that prevents this, but it will be good to write it into care plans if that's approach. But the other thing that came out of that discussion was that families will hit crisis, they will turn to social media. They could say, my daughter's just got up, she lit a candle in the lounge, knocked it over and it set fire to the curtains. We got out okay, but what do I do? And within half an hour, there's 24 different solutions there, which the families will then implement. And the professionals, because of the pressures that they've got on them, will see what's been implemented a few months further down and will make an instant judgment call on it without actually pausing to think why the families need to do that. So this is why I'm saying it needs this step back. It needs almost all of the decision makers, the representatives of all of the teams being put into a hall and the door locked behind them and said, you come out when you get this sorted and when you agree how to work together. I never did get my consensus document. It's something that's still eluding me, but I can see it coming now in that we've got so much good initiatives going on with all of those assessments that are coming through. It's how do we get them together? Who owns it? Who's got access to this data? How do we make sure it works for our families?
Yeah.
And that's something I've not seen in terms of the review of self-directed support. It still seems to be a little bit siloed. And that was quite a lot, so sorry going on.
No, don't worry, Nigel. Laura, did you have a wee comment?
Yeah, I certainly don't have all the answers or the consensus, I'm afraid, Nigel. But yeah, it's thank you for sharing that experience, and I absolutely understand that, you know, that need for clarity, and really appreciate that you've tried to do that facilitation. You've not quite locked them in the door, but you've behind the door, but you've certainly got them together and asked the questions to say, you know, we'd like to know what the right and the best practice is. And I suppose we absolutely do have a standard in there about capturing data, but it's a bigger issue across Scotland and across all our services, as Donna said. That's definitely one of the reasons that the country as a whole at the moment is considering a national care service, and to what extent we can capture that information and do that in the best way. We absolutely know families and people don't want to tell their story lots and lots of times. That's not something that's helpful or useful. So we need really good ways, and maybe there are digital solutions to that as well. The digital front door that Donna talked about it's kind of talked about, and you might have heard about it in the context of healthcare, so that, you know, there's been, debate and narrative around us owning our own health records that's sort of changed over time. And with the sort of as we've all got a bit more comfortable with being online and using digital in new ways, which was spurred on a lot by the pandemic as well, you know, we're starting to think more about that in social work as well, and for social care. So if you had access to a portal that was your space online where your records existed and your assessments and your plans exist. Now this is, you know, not going to be what the first iteration of the digital front door looks like, but if we're thinking about down the line and what we would ideally want it to look like, that might be the place where, you know, that health and social care integrated approach digitally online might fit some of the bill that you're talking about, because that's, you know, that is a lot of different assessments and things that are, you know, being asked of people and being documented about people. So that's obviously kind of one of the areas, but I think probably most overwhelmingly what the point that I was really taking on from you, Nigel, there was about how we're not yet talking the language of self-directed support in health. Just like Cheryl was telling us, we're not really speaking the language of self-directed support maybe in education or other children's services. We might be a wee bit stuck in our own domain at the moment, and that's something that we've got to try and address. And certainly something that I've already heard on the bits of work that we've done around the standards is they're saying, they're written for social work practitioners, and they're written for social work practitioners and social work senior practitioners and leaders as well, because that's where the statutory responsibilities lie. But there's so many other practitioners and professionals and peer support organisations and friends and groups like this that also have a role, not necessarily a statutory one, but certainly an incredibly powerful and impactful one. So we absolutely do need to get better at sharing across and learning how what already happens in education, what already happens in health can fit more, SDS can fit round and beside and with. That's really, really important too. Sorry, I think maybe Donna wants to.
Oh, no, you just made me think, because as Laura will contest, I'm out there all the time trying to join the dots, Nigel. I'm not a social worker. So I use SDS, I'm a PA and also, within the community. So for me, it makes sense to put the person at the centre, the family at the centre, and join it all around. So some of the spaces that I've been looking at where strategically leadership level they're working together, so that National Improvement Programme for Community Health and Social Care. So that's Solace and SG and COSLA, so local authorities, the leaders in local authorities and Scottish Government in both health and social care and social work, trying to look at the systems that drive it and the frameworks, like you said, that they're operating in, and where there's commonality. So things like what matters to you is exactly the same as a good outcome focused conversation. It's strength-based, asset-based. Realistic medicine is about, what the community and social prescribing can do. But for some reason, the professionals in each of those services find it difficult to share that language, never mind an approach, never mind acknowledging where each is coming from. So I think that's definitely a work in progress, and we've all got an obligation in the work that we do to stretch out, to reach out, to understand and connect. And I think at a local level it does work, certainly in rural area. I'm in rural Perthshire. Our health, social work, voluntary sector, along with people who are using their direct payment, work really well together. So the nurse will come and cover for care, they'll show carers what to do, budgets will be used to fund local support, some of it's free. And so that works at that level. But if we took that back to the system, it would be a nightmare to operate. So it's almost, it operates outside the systems at the moment. And we probably need some of those examples to push into the system a little bit, and truly try to understand what that might look like if you scaled it up, or if you, spread it out a bit, and what that would look like. But yes, completely acknowledge what you said. Again, sorry, no answers, but certainly learning for us to keep taking back the practice, getting it right for every child. I think one of the views of Scottish Government is that we have it getting it right for everyone, and that practice framework sits across all the services. So is that a way that we can start breaking down that kind of silo thinking and really encourage shared practice don't know, but certainly that's a model that's out there just now, and learning from GIRFIC and what would that look like in getting it right for everyone, not just getting it right for every child. So again, we're trying to have SDS in that conversation. What would getting it right for everyone in terms of choosing your care and support, choosing whether you have a budget or whether you get a service, that kind of idea. So yeah, we can keep in touch, Lauren, through through this group and through yourselves about any developments, and certainly we'd welcome any ideas about how can we do it better, how can we do it differently, where are people doing it differently, what can we learn from that. So thank you.
No, brilliant, thank you so much. If anyone, I'm just aware of time for these lovely ladies, they've given up their Thursday evening already, but if anyone has any other questions, please feel free, or I will certainly share all this information, the slides, the presentation, the links and bits and pieces with yourselves, but also everyone on our Facebook group and our mailing list. But if there's any questions for Donna, Laura, I know that you guys will be happy to answer them. So please, if I can sort of connect anyone up, then just let us know. But thank you so much. It's a topic that I'm really passionate about. I know you guys are all really passionate about. So thank you so much to Laura and Donna for coming this evening and giving up your time, but also to all of you. It's lovely to see you all like usual. And just to let you know, our next month, so for June, our theme for Family Connect is going to be welfare rights and money advice. These are all topics that all of you have said are important, and it's what you want to hear about. So I will keep you posted with all of that as well. But you know where I am in the meantime, and I will connect everybody up so that you've got all of that information. And I'll hopefully see you all soon. All right, enjoy the rest of your evening, everyone.
You too. Thank you very much.
Thanks again, Lauren. Thank you for your time, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.